Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Raven, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have the filmmaker of this film, Rooted in Peace, Greg Reitman. We were up at the United Nations the other day with a screening of it and with a panel discussion with a couple of very wonderful people talking about the importance of a film like this and the interface, you could say, of peace as well as health and respect for the environment and sustainability. That's going to be the subject of today's show and what Greg went through in the making of the film and his own personal journey, which is really very much articulated and outlined in the film, which makes it very personal and very juicy. So,
Juicy.
hey,
Thank you for having me.
absolutely good to have you. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, bottom line is I loved following the path, your own interest, your sense of mission that developed as it went on, your curiosity. All of that was really kind of mapped out well in the film, as well as your frustrations, your own ups and downs of your own journey. So what got you going with this in the first place?
I've made a couple of films prior.
Yes.
One of them, which won the Audience Award at Sundance, called Fuel, which looked at our addiction to oil
I saw it.
and understood the impact of making documentaries that have a social impact. And like all of us, I'm from New York, and I was, deeply moved and concerned about America as a country post 9/11 and what was happening in terms of
I was concerned about it pre 9/11.
pre 9/11.
Also.
Well, more post 9/11 in terms of the post doctrine, in terms of the freedom and the laws and the security
Yeah.
and what was.
The whole question of sovereignty versus surveillance.
Yes, and really, and for me, where the rubber sort of hit the nail was coming through JFK Airport, almost being arrested for not giving up my bottled water. And at that moment in time, really questioning the merit of what was happening, what TSA,
You could say that was quite a splash.
what TSA agents can do to you,
Yeah.
how you really have no rights.
Right, how they have rights and you do
You
not.
do not, and essentially, if I didn't give up that bottled water within a particular time period, one, I wasn't going to get on the flight, and two, I was going to go to jail. And it really
Jail?
and so it really it moved me, and and then I started thinking about my experiences back at UMass Amherst when I had made my first tree planting initiative, and post Gulf War II, and I kind of saw like history was repeating itself, and so this idea of planting trees that I thought 30 years ago we thought was so far fetched, it didn't seem so far fetched anymore, and now in terms of the present, global climate, I think it has even more merit.
Absolutely, I agree. I used to be friendly, Greg, with Jake Swamp, who was Mohawk Nation, Jake?
I do.
And who had a Plants a Tree Society, something of that sort.
Yes.
And he would go around the world planting trees. And it looked, I remember when I knew him fairly well in the mid-90s, it was like, wow, of course it's a great idea, but of all things to do, But the reality is, that's a fantastic thing to do.
But it's almost like, if you think about that in itself, the value question, where we put our values and what's important. I think we put our values in making money, versus doing good in the world. And why are they different? Why can't we make money and do good in the world at the same time? And I think that's
You're
really,
singing my tune.
I think that's really the merit of it. If we realize like every tree is the life source, our oxygen, and we really understood our interconnected truth to the natural world, I think we'd have a much different value chain. And I think that was really sort of what I sort of got out of the film was, was sort of that.
And that's what
truth.
you put into the film, too, actually.
Yeah.
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 My organization's called A Better World. How do you like that?
I love that.
What a place to begin, right?
Absolutely.
But it has as its motto, as its fundamental foundation, is the idea of people and planet before profit. we're not at all saying anything about uh, that it's not good to make money. Nothing about it like that at all. But when you sacrifice us, our species, and our planet for money, it's like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, and I
And
would,
the Green Party also endorses that idea.
yeah, and I would almost, add on to that would be,
Yeah.
what we took from the film was Paul Hawken and Amory Lovins and Hunter Lovins,
Mhm.
the concept in the book of natural capitalism. Like, why are we taking the natural capital off of the financial spreadsheet? Why is it when, a corporation
Absolutely. Good
has
point.
13,000 square feet and they have the power of the lights, where does that energy come from? And that doesn't get constituted on the balance sheet.
That's a really
And
good
so
point.
it's really the circular life flows. They're all about these flows. As again, we have great luminaries like William McDonough, who talks about it's all there. We get our inspiration from nature. We get our design from nature. But what is it that inhibits us or stops us from, connecting those dots with nature? And so if we just, realize there's a value, like now they're starting to, they're looking at carbon, which is a effusive, you can't see it, and they're saying, okay, we're going to tax it because it's a commodity. But for the last, 200 or X thousands years we've been on the planet,
Yeah.
we've never actually put a value on it. Now they're going to say that carbon is worth billions of dollars. But I guess it's
Well, there's
it's,
also the cap and trade and all
yeah,
of that.
it's an evolution. It really, or maybe it's just what we don't see. Therefore we don't see it. Therefore it's not truthful. It's out of mind, out of sight.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And it's now with technology and
yeah.
everything we now see.
Yeah, that's right. Going back to the film, I
Yeah.
very much appreciate all that you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
totally on board with it. I'm part of the Pachamama Alliance,
Oh, wow.
which is, I'm one of the facilitators of Awakening the Dreamer, which is a powerful use of video. In fact, it would be good, maybe we can get your video, some clips in there.
I would love that.
Into some of their
Archer
work.
Karma up in the Berkshires, we've been trying. I'd love to talk with you about that.
Okay,
That would
absolutely.
be absolutely fabulous. We interviewed Dr. Mark Hyman up in
I
Lenox,
know,
Mass,
I
which
know.
is right in the hub in that same area.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Well, the Pachamama Alliance's main offices happen to be out in the Bay Area.
Okay.
But nonetheless, they're worldwide.
Huge.
And
3,000.
Paul Hawken, some of his work in Speaking at Pioneers was a film clip that was taken when he's talking about blessed unrest and the millions of organizations around the world, millions, that are doing work like what you're doing in film and what I'm doing with TV and radio and writing and teaching, are playing these roles, Greg, like NGOs, teaching people how to cultivate their own soil, improve the soil, grow their own, be sustainable, solar ovens, you name it. All sorts of things for self-enrichment and community enrichment, really.
Yeah, and also just, it's such a simple thing, but if you feel good, you know what I mean?
I
Like
do.
you eat good, you feel good, it just
do.
sets your day, There's something about that, like if the soil's unhealthy, then we're not going to be healthy. By the way, Blessed Unrest, there are pieces from that book in the film, by the way.
Oh, there are.
Yes.
You and I, it's very
But
funny.
I love that book. That was actually
Yeah.
the inspiration when I read that book for me to go and reach out to Paul Hawken.
Oh, God.
So brilliant for you to bring that out in this interview. That's just
Yes.
fantastic.
Well, I know of him going back to the ecology of commerce,
Okay.
which is probably dating me. But nonetheless, he was laying out the economic basis of being ecological.
Yeah.
Way back, when it was not popular. Now it's the thing. But it's so funny, talk about our own kind of rapport behind the scenes, even before meeting. I was in Mill Valley interviewing Deborah Garcia,
Okay.
just a year ago,
Okay.
and about Symphony of the Soil.
Yeah.
So, there were a lot of things like that that I just especially appreciated. The people that you were bringing, the heart math people, etc., the
Yeah.
TM movement and all.
Yeah, there were a lot of strands. There were a lot of wisdom teachers.
Absolutely.
Surya Das from
Surya, I know he sat in this chair several
who's
times.
also in the film. Yeah,
Exactly.
no, it was an interesting sort of collection of wisdom teachers, environmental thought leaders, and then medical doctors. I mean,
Exactly.
the thing that I think which is really unique about the film is when we think of peace, we think of like marches or we think of movements. We don't think of peace in the terms of biology or health.
Exactly.
And for me, what I take home is when I think of rooted in peace, I think of, H to the third power. Healthy mind, healthy heart, healthy body equals healthy world.
Beautiful.
And that was really the sort of, my summation of what I learned. What I'm putting in my mind, if I'm thinking well, if I'm in a beautiful state, if my heart is filled with compassion, if I'm putting the right nutrients into my body, how do I feel? And if I do that in a continuing way, for 30 days, then it becomes my mantra, and then,
It becomes a habit.
yeah, and then how do I show up? And so, truth be told, you are what you eat, and also the world is as you are, which is what Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said, and I never really thought about it in the film, but it's like, wow, if I'm a happy person, my world's going to be happy.
Exactly. Well, that's the other thing I mean, that's actually the thread that connected me to the film and to you.
Oh, really?
Which is, yeah, because I look at the world very much spiritually and sort of biologically and neuroscientifically. So the things that you were touching
All of
upon,
it in there, yeah.
it's all there. And I
Yeah.
was laughing to myself as I was watching it, thinking, do we know each other? Because if I were to make a film, it would be touching upon heart math, and it wouldn't have been including TM as such. But I've been involved in other practices. It doesn't matter.
But I'm sure
It's the
Dan,
same
but
idea.
I'm sure Dan Siegel, who was in the film and the whole mindfulness movement, I'm sure resonated with you.
Well, I had the Natural Law Party presidential candidate here several times with Bob Roth, who was in the film,
Yes.
who I haven't seen since he was sitting on my sofa here, with John Hagelin.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
you know the whole movement,
I
and
do.
so this was taking it to the other dimension. But you make a very important point, Greg, which is that peace begins here, and Mahatma Gandhi and everyone of note, Desmond Tutu, everyone says, how can you be, and Deepak Chopra you quote as saying, you don't want to be an angry peace activist.
No, it's an oxymoron.
It's such an
But
oxymoron.
the truth is, we are angry. It's our birthright to be angry, to see what we're doing and how we're destroying our planet, and
Oh, no question about it.
we're embodying that. But what the truth is, and this is what I thought was so important about our UN screening, was bringing that truth forward, which is what we did. But the key point here is our symbiotic relationship between ourselves and the natural world.
That's
If
right.
we understood what the bees do in terms of our own biology, and if the bees died,
And food.
yeah, and if the bees died, we died,
Yeah.
we'd have a different value chain. We wouldn't just look at them as bees. We're in a way, we're a selfish. We think for ourselves. We're a selfish species. But when we understand the practical nature of what these other species do for us and how they serve us in this symbiotic relationship, if we had a deeper appreciation in that value added change, our world would be so different. I mean, think about it. If Donald Trump knew, if he was gonna lose his artery, if, for example, the giraffes weren't on the planet, but if they were doing something for us, we'd have a whole different value chain for giraffes.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, we don't. We think of ourselves as sort of separate. We think of ourselves as sort of myopic. We have this myopic view of the world, that the world is ours, and that's not our truth.
Well, I agree with you. I feel like we actually have a very solipsistic and narcissistic perspective that somehow, and this is actually partly biblical, this idea that we are to dominate nature.
Yeah.
It's not really, I heard, the proper translation, but it kind of comes across that way, and many people in business have run with that interpretation. But we are here to be part of.
Well, they're understanding what's happening, and it's kind of sad. And I did say it in the film, and it really hurts. I said we're sick, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because I said I made the film. I don't want to date it, but when I said it, and now it's getting even more as we watch it. We're even sicker,
That's right.
and there's more cancer. There's more um, poverty. Our problems aren't going away, and unfortunately, we have to come to understand how are we going to deal with our biology, as a
Exactly.
species, and what is the right mechanism, for getting back into balance. And it's not going to be, taking an insulin shot if you're diabetic, or taking 10 pills a day, or, it's going to have to be a very simple thing like getting up in the morning, maybe going walking in a park, getting your sun, you know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Making sure your
Vitamin D, baby.
vitamin D, making sure your soil is healthy because that's where you
That's
make
right.
your food, and the idea of gardening, which we might take as sort of obsolete, like not important, might actually be one of the most important things we teach our kids so that they have a relationship with the earth. They really understand where their food is coming from.
You know, Greg, you're a New Yorker, so you know about the farmers markets in New
Of
York.
course.
Well, I'm over at the Union Square Market 3 to 4 times a week. And what I see is school children. The classes come out en masse, even in the winter, and they're teaching these little 7, 8, 9-year-olds and 6-year-olds about all the vegetables. Some of these vegetables they've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I smile, laugh, and almost cry sometimes watching these kids get excited about all of the different foods from nature that they didn't even know about because in their families they were being raised on McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, it's really easy. You get in your car, you drive up, you get your food, and you just eat. But again,
Except it's not food.
it's not. Well, I mean, it's just connecting the dots, and I
That's
think
right.
that's what the film I think does in a very sort of organic way. It really helps connect the
It really
dots
does.
in a very way that mainstream America can digest it. You know what I mean? It's not.
To continue the metaphor,
Yeah, it's
right?
not over the
Yeah.
top. It's not a hard message. There's no
No.
preaching. You never see me preach, and there's no politics in the film. We literally stripped out the politics. We made it an apolitical film. It's really about a choice about how you want to live, and in your own mind what you need to go through to get to that choice.
You know, I would only say that there's nothing that we do that doesn't have a political or economic um, symbolism
Of course,
and consequence.
of course.
So you were not talking about politics like the political congressional body, no.
No.
But every choice that you were kind of suggesting through your own choices in the film represent a way of life that could change everything.
Of course. I mean, look, everything's political when you break
That's
it
my
down.
point.
Of course. But the truth is, there wasn't a political issue. We're not saying,
No.
abort oil or
Vote yes, vote no.
No, it
No, no.
wasn't about that. It was
Mm-mm.
really
No,
just
no.
saying, do you believe in the natural rights of the world? Do you believe in, healthy soil? That's what I'm asking you to choose for. If you choose healthy soil, it means you choose healthy food. What I'm asking you to really come to understanding is this idea of why we extract, as Paul Hawkins says in the film, and we take and then we pollute. Does that serve us anymore? When we now know the sun comes up every day for free, that we can now receive all that energy that can empower our planet.
Photons.
So why aren't we doing? So again, when we break it down in the most simplest way for the consumer, it doesn't get so scattered for them.
Right.
It gets very clear.
Right.
I remember my mom would say, "Oh my God, we're going to put solar panels, and what's that going to cost?" And blah blah blah. And I was like, "What are you're going to pay for it anyway?" And then in 7 years, you get it all back. But again, it's people look. We're people are always concerned about the cost, their money, how it's going to affect their balance sheet or their pocketbook. And if we can just do it in a way where they understand, if you make these choices right, you won't be sitting in the hospital for 4 years.
And then what does that
and
cost?
and then paying $250,000 or more. I mean, how many people do you know who are sick and you find out what their costs are from the hospital?
Yeah.
Not necessary. And it's
Completely
all. And I
unnecessary.
think what we really need to understand is we don't have to live in that pain and suffering modality. That there really is a way where we can live in this beautiful state of consciousness or this beautiful state of being that really serves us. Why wake up and be angry and torn and be unhappy? Why? You don't want that. No one wants that.
I don't have that, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, and there are
Because
a
too
lot.
many people, because all of this,
There's
their
100.
interpretation of their life is one of
Of
stress.
course.
And, you know, it's been said, Martin Luther King and others, if you want peace, start with justice. Which brings it to another realm, but it's implicit in all that we're saying here.
Yeah.
And what your film does, it, I think, very accurately hits upon the holistic qualities that are needed for peace. Maybe you didn't mention that one, but it's implied fundamentally anyway.
Oh.
You talked about healthy mind, healthy, you know, the three H's.
Yeah.
Right, healthy mind, healthy spirit, healthy body, and healthy earth. And when you do that, when you have a lifestyle that supports those things, you're going to get a positive result.
Yeah, and I think also what we, I think as Dr. Fred Travis says, from, in Maharishi at the university.
Oh, yes.
He says, was very
That's a
interesting,
great
when I'm
segment.
learning for the first time how to meditate and putting the brain cap on. I made a joke.
Yeah.
Mork and Mindy beam me up, right? And he's like, no. He's like, it's time to grow up. It's
right.
time to understand that where your capacity is your brain power.
Yes.
And that is your thermonuclear reactor. That can actually serve you or hinder you. So when you really understand how that works
The
and how you can
mechanisms.
turn it on and how you can understand what meditation does, you don't no longer need to medicate. I mean, think about all the kids that have autism that are being medicated. They now know that meditation is a preventative way for removing all the drugs, all the big pharma out of the system.
Greg.
I know. It's all money.
It is.
It's all, and people turn around. I interviewed a guy who didn't make the film, but will be in the book, and I'm happy to do a post interview with you.
Sure.
In 2018, Elwin and Lewin are publishing my book.
Beautiful.
Which a lot of things I couldn't say in the film because it was so dense will be in the book. And
Great.
One of the gatekeepers of the Self-Realization Center, Brother Ashalanda, who I interviewed.
Self-Realization Fellowship.
Yeah, the SRF in out in
Palisades.
in the Palisades, and he talks about greed, and it was fascinating.
I've been on this for a long time.
But the thing
In
about
fact,
you can't tell
the
people.
thing is,
I mean, you can't tell people you can't make money. I mean, of course you can make money,
it's got nothing to do with it. In reality, I want to go back to something you said. You said that we are sick. And then you talked about poverty and you talked about different kinds of illness. My background is in psychology and acupuncture, but I see, and I've been diagnosing the system for a long time, and the people in the system really, both. We're mentally sick. And that's what leads to the world that we have today. It's a mental sickness, and greed, since you mentioned it, is a function of the reptilian brain. It's this feeling that we need more from the outside world to fill us up. So it's both a physical
psychological
thing and a psychological one, because we all come into this world with this sense that we are not enough for ourselves.
Well,
and I'm very clear about what the elements are.
And by the way, I mean, you could see that across the board. But on the second level, what I would say is it's just a value add. I mean, look at Ted Turner. Look what he did. Look of how he's nurtured.
It was great to meet Laura, by the way,
look
the
about
other
his
day.
daughter
Yeah.
and their sons, and how they're all environmental stewards. They all have a connection to the planet. These people, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the Turners have lots of businesses, lots of money, but why is it they care about the environment? They got that value add from their grandfather or their father.
True
and
enough.
I think it's a value add when we really understand the relevance of nature and what nature gives to us, and that we're not separate, that we're part of it.
Yes.
That's for me where I see hope, because we can say we are sick, but if you can take anybody into a park and they can walk into a park after 20 minutes and they're gonna feel
Start to feel good.
yeah,
Well, so what you're saying is that, to translate, that you recognize that I'm right about the sickness,
completely.
but the solution is really close at hand.
Absolutely, you can, and there are parks everywhere, right on
Parks
in
are
DC.
everywhere.
They can wake up in the morning and they can smell, the fresh
Smell the
trees, or the flowers, or the oxygen that will get into their body, and they will feel better. They'll be more connected, and they'll know they're part of something. And I think that in itself gives me hope because it's all there.
It's all here.
It's all there, and it's just how we present it.
I surrounded you with nature. I hope you saw that.
I did.
Greg, this has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Milton, it was great. Thank you.
Great. And
Mitchell,
this
right?
film,
Yeah.
this film is really worthwhile. So pick it up, see it. Your website
Yeah, it's
is
rootedinpeace.com, and now the DVD will be nationwide in Whole Foods
fantastic.
starting today.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a great,
Sure.
great interview.
So glad you
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
and I really see where you're coming from. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think what's really, you probably enjoyed in the panel, which was, what's his name?
Fabienne
Not
Cousteau.
Fabian Cousteau.
Lawrence Bloom.
How we said,
I invited him to come.
Which we're now in a world where we're becoming conscious, where we're becoming aware. And I think
That's right.
and I think what's wonderful about this film is that, for a lot of people, it's going to be for the first time they're going to be learning information, but information is power.
That's right.
And when they understand what's happening to themselves, like for example, even within my own family, my mom didn't know we had mercury fillings in my mouth, and I took them out. My sister left hers in, and there's a dividing line. That's where it gets political, and I said no. Silver, the amalgams create mercury. When I got my blood test, 80% of mercury was in my body.
Comes from here.
Of course. Now, the studies in Canada, the studies in Sweden, the studies in Norway, all came out and said mercury fillings are bad. Now, why is it in America?
There's a poison sign on the mercury thing. Hello?
Of course.
What does that mean?
But I'm just saying, but they won't put it in your mouth anymore, but they won't take it out.
Go figure, as we say in Chinese in New York
But
City.
let the truth set you free.
Absolutely. Thank you again. We're out of time.
Okay.
When you figure out how to manufacture time, please call me.
We could go for that was the whole time. Wow, what a great interview.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to reach out to us at mjr@abetterworld.net. I love hearing from you, and go, of course, to abetterworld.tv and become part of A Better World community. Take care, and I'll see you next week.